Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way evening briefing, TCW React. I'm still working that one out, trying to figure out what we're going to call it. TCW React, I think we'll go with. TCW reacts to Rodgers' press conference as he talks Broony, St Johnstone and Celtic's future manager, potentially. My name is Ryan McGinley. Today I'm delighted, as always, to be joined by Tony Haggerty at Haggerty10 on the X handle. Tony, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm fine, but my dogs just took a... you can never script these things, can you? Unbelievable. They've been quiet for like all afternoon. Now all of a sudden they are going bananas just as we've gone live, as you can probably hear.
Yes, I can hear that. I'll do the shout out for the YouTube members while we wait Tony's dogs quieting down. If you want to support our work just that little bit extra, you can join our YouTube members channel for just £2.99 a month. With that, you'll receive early video access, priority comments, and exclusive members chat function. Oh, I'm getting a wee bit of background noise from you, Tony. I'll do that again. If you want to support our work just that little bit more, you can join our YouTube members channel for just £2.99 a month. You'll receive early video access, priority comments, and exclusive members chat function. If you want to click that join button and get involved, £2.99. Thank you to all of our members so far. And if anyone wants to join us, you can click that join button on your desktop just next to the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Let's see if there's any background noise now. Yeah, Tony. I think it's your microphone, either that or your headphones or something, but there's a lot of background noise coming from that. While you sort that out, I will just go on and discuss what we're going to be talking about. Brendan Rodgers was talking to them. See if you just mute yourself, just because it's really noisy in the background. Sorry. Oh, I'll just go on with this. Sorry, guys, about that. It's just the noise, and it's live audio as well. You know what it's like, guys. First of all, thank you to everybody that's joined us. I'll just have a wee look at the comments. Mark McQueen says, not seen the interview, take it, there'll be spoilers. Good afternoon, all. Afternoon, Arthur. Kim Rugby says, good afternoon, boys and girls. Ross Crawford saying, good afternoon, boys. Loving the show. Hail, hail, hail. Thank you very much, Ross. Appreciate that. Today, we're going to be talking about Brendan Rodgers' press conference, which happened today. Of course, Callum McGregor was talking on Wednesday, so that covered his St Johnstone, pre-St Johnstone thoughts. So it was the manager that was discussing the St Johnstone game at McDermott Park. So that was good to hear. Tony, you're back. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Can you hear me okay? Is there background noise?
That's better now. That's better. There isn't. There was a bit of a real static. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can't control that background noise. You've controlled the other bits, so I appreciate that. Tony, I was just saying that it was Brendan Rodgers' turn to talk to the media. Callum McGregor was talking during the week before the women's team's great result that got them into the Champions League. First of all, you seen the result, or you seen the draw rather, 20 and Chelsea, and who was the other team that was
Real Madrid, I believe.
Real Madrid. Wow, the big team that I forgot about there. That's how typical. A great draw, some great ties, and one of those games will be played at Celtic Park. The other two will be played at New Douglas Park, which is the new home of Celtic's women's football.
You would have thought that they would move the Real Madrid game to Celtic Park then, wouldn't you? That's the glamour clash, isn't it?
You would think so.
If possible.
You would think so, but actually Chelsea might be more of a glamour tie. It's weird to think that, but they do have one of the top strikers in women's football at this present moment in time. I know she's previously recovering from an ACL injury, of which there seems to be a lot more ACL injuries happening in women's football. I think it's 4 or 5 times more likely to happen. Which is quite concerning, actually, and it's a real game changer if one of your players gets one of them. Difficult to come back from as well. I know Rodgers out for Man City at the moment, but you're about 4 or 5 times more likely to pick it up in the women's game, which is something that they're doing more research into. But Chelsea have Sam Kerr up front, the Australian striker, who is widely known as one of the top players in women's football. So that could be seen as a glamour tie. But if you're looking at names, historical names, regardless if it's men or women playing, Real Madrid is that name, isn't it?
Yeah, that's to me that would be the box office one. But I guess a Battle of Britain, Celtic women and Chelsea women would also have appeal to go to Parkhead. But I guess it's a toss-up between one of those two, isn't it? And if permitting, well, one of them's going to Celtic Park, isn't it? So I think it's one of those two. So we'll leave it up to the powers that be to decide that or whatever when they think that it's more glamorous. They're 2 glamour ties, to be honest. I think that's a brilliant draw for Celtic. And as I said this morning, go on and pick your wits against the best and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into this Brendan Rodgers press conference, shall we? There's a wide variety of things that were discussed today in Brendan Rodgers' press conference this afternoon. The first one was Cameron Carter-Vickers, who will miss out tomorrow. He'll miss tomorrow. He's got a pain in his big toe in the joint there, so we'll just have to look at that each game. He's been playing with it for a little while, but we'll try and manage it now because he was in pain in the Bratislava game. It'll settle down quite quickly, and we'll see where it's at for Tuesday. Fingers crossed. Alistair Johnson is fit for the game tomorrow against St Johnstone. Tony, would you just expect him to slot straight back in that right back position?
Yeah, I mentioned this morning again that if there was any problems with Alistair Johnson, if he didn't say he was 100% fit, then I wouldn't have risked him. But he's clearly thinking he's coming back straight back in, isn't he? And he will play. Cameron Carter-Vickers, I think he'll play on Tuesday then, from what the manager's saying there. He's giving him every chance, isn't he? Just not risking him in this one. And if it can be managed, then I would imagine that he might take some kind of injection, before Tuesday. See if that helps. But that seems to be the plan, doesn't it? And hopefully everything's all right, because big toe's a strange one, isn't it? The only other person I remember whose toe gave him grief was Mark Reaper, wasn't it? Who ended up having to quit the game because of his toe injury eventually. So here's hoping that, Brendan Rodgers seems to say it can be managed. So hoping it's not as serious or it doesn't turn out to be serious, further down the road. So, but I think that's very encouraging for Tuesday. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers has obviously been primed to play for that.
Yeah, absolutely. The dogs are certainly agreeing with you, Tony. I once again apologise. There's nothing that we can do about that. It's very difficult to control that. I know what it's like personally, Tony, so I totally understand that. Cameron Carter-Vickers is so important for the success of this team, both domestically and in Europe. But I think it also brings an opportunity for Austin Trusty to get more minutes. I would say that he's now a certainty to start tomorrow. I don't think it'll be Stephen Welsh and Liam Scales at the back. I think it'll be Scales and Austin Trusty, even though they're both right-sided or they're both left-sided. I don't think that should cause too much of a problem. For the back line, you get two right-sided defenders all the time. Celtic had that for years, so I think it should be fine the other way about. Would you expect Austin Trusty to slot straight back in? Muted.
I don't have any qualms about Austin Trusty and two left-sided defenders. I think they're going to be given a job to do, so just do it. So I'm not overly worried about that. The fact that it's two left-sided defenders, you just got on with the job at hand, and that's just solidify that defence. I think Liam Scales, as everybody knows, from the start of this season, has started the season like a train, and he's been the best of the central defenders so far on show. So I don't have any reservations about Trusty slotting in beside them and the two of them doing a job and being able to snuff St Johnstone out at the back of the pack. Alistair Johnson will be there and Greg Taylor will be there, so there'll be a familiarity about that back four.
Yeah.
Listen, this is really doing my head in. Going to give me a second and I'll...
Yeah, no problem. I'll go with the next sort of question. So I'll read out some more of what Brendan Rodgers had to say just ahead of the game, both at the weekend and the game on Tuesday. In fact, I'm going to actually read out the women's team stuff because he was talking about how brilliant it was to see the women's team get through to the Champions League group stage. As we talked about in the morning briefing, they are the first Scottish side to do so in this current format. He said that he was absolutely delighted. I think you see the progress that Elena has made with her staff and with the players. It's been absolutely fantastic. To earn the right to get into the Champions League. I've seen the draw. It's all great games for them and a really exciting season ahead for them. He was also asked about Carter-Vickers and saying, is it a case of trying if this issue settles down over time, or is it a more significant issue that might require more significant treatment? He responded saying, no, it's not that. It's just a tolerance of pain. I think he'd gone through a lot and pushed him through a lot. It wasn't getting any better. There were signs of it. I don't think it was getting worse, but he was having to go through too much pain with it, really. He's a tough character. We just felt it's obviously one of those ones with rest that will self-correct and he will be okay. So I was touching upon the comments that Brendan Rodgers has made about Cameron Carter-Vickers. It hasn't got any worse, but he just wants to manage it for the next few games.
Yeah, I think that's the best course of action, isn't it? And thankfully, it hasn't got any worse. So, again, I think the manager alluded to the fact that it's treatable, isn't it? So it's just basically getting him through the kind of pain barrier here, and if he can do it on a kind of game-by-game basis, but obviously he feels that he can sit out tomorrow, but as long as he's back for most important game, which is Tuesday night, isn't it? So I think every Celtic supporter wants that, and they also want to see a wee bit more of Trusty, to see if he can be trusted further down the line in that central defensive role. So yeah, just Liam Scales will be with another American central defensive partner, but it won't be his normal one.
Yeah, absolutely. There seems to be a real American contingent in that back line at the moment, with Alistair Johnston obviously being North American as well, from Canada, just north of the USA. So that's good to see. And I'm happy that Austin Trusty is going to get that second opportunity to really cement himself in the Celtic back line. I think in an ideal world, we want to see both Trusty and Cameron Carter-Vickers play, but just due to CCV's injuries at the moment, that isn't happening. Tony, would you be able to just mute your mic when I'm speaking, just because it's really, really loud, the background noise, and I think everybody else can hear it when it's going. It is really difficult. Once again, I apologise for the audio issues that are going through on Tony's mic at the moment. I'll go on and speak about, I think the best place next to go is surrounding Scott Brown, and he was getting spoke about quite a bit over the past week or so when he was getting linked with the vacant St Johnstone job that looks as if it might be getting given to the Aberdeen coach, Peter Leven, which would be a good appointment by all accounts. Scott Brown has recently extended his deal with Ayr United over the past 24 hours to 2027, so they're definitely backing their man. They've managed to keep their man at the club, and Scott Brown was getting spoke about by Brendan Rodgers. He said that Scott's doing a fantastic job at Ayr, and he and Stephen, which would be Stephen Whittaker, former Rangers and Hibs player, and his staff are doing really well there. They've obviously lifted Ayr into a really good place, having joined them last season. I think for Scott, there's no rush. I've got no doubt he'll be a really successful manager. He went into Ayr and obviously kept them up last year and had a really good pre-season. I could see that in pre-season. They were a few weeks ahead of us, but I could see the ideas of what they were trying to implement and how they played. They started the season very, very well. For Scott, it's not about a club for his next step. It's about the right club. I always think that, especially when you're a young manager, getting to the right club is important, but not if you're already at a good club. He's at a good club and he's happy. I wasn't surprised that he didn't take it, but I'm not surprised that his name is linked with the job. So pretty encouraging words from his former manager to this former Celtic captain, obviously one of the leaders in that team through Brendan Rodgers' first spell at the club. And he does back him to become a top manager, doesn't he, Tony?
I think he saw enough of him, didn't he, at Celtic Park during his tenure there? You know, he said he was a kind of snarling skipper and all that, but he was speaking about the fact that being a captain and being a leader and being a manager are different things altogether. But he's been impressed enough with Scott Brown, and he said he admired the fact that he went down to England as well with Fleetwood and took a chance there. But he's come back up here and he's did very well at Ayr United. But I think he's right. I think the advice he would have given him would have been, he told him not to just rush into the first job that comes along. I think he was more or less saying to him, serve your apprenticeship. You went to Fleetwood, you've had a managerial experience. Granted, it maybe didn't turn out the way you wanted it, but it was a brave step. And you take all the learnings that you have there, make you a better manager. Take that to Ayr United, make you a better manager. The grass isn't always greener at the first hurdle that you might jump ship to. And I think he was maybe saying to him, look, if you turn out to be the manager that you want to be, and you take your managerial career trajectory on the way up, which it's clearly going, then that club, that right club, will come calling. And he has every faith in Scott Brown to do that and probably manage in the Scottish Premiership, the top flight, at some point in the future. Maybe just not now. And maybe that's the advice he gave him, or recommendation, as Brendan Rodgers said. You're maybe not ready for it. And a club like St Johnstone, where do you go if you fail there? So I think he's kind of telling him to just try and be a success at Ayr United. You're in a kind of promotion fight with Falkirk at this minute. He's both started really, really well. So if you can bring a team up from the Championship to the top flight, then that looks great on your CV, doesn't it? As opposed to going to a team that's struggling and maybe on the way down, and you're having to do a lot of things. So I think he was maybe just saying, be wise about your next move, because you've got a good thing going and you're in a happy place. And I think personal happiness counts for a lot in football, Ryan.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think happiness, you can't put a price on happiness, and that's true off the pitch as it is on the pitch. And having that steady sort of area to work and really showcase your craft, I think, especially at Ayr United, a team that are doing really well at the moment in the Championship. He'll be hoping that next season he can play or he can manage his team in the Scottish Premiership. That being at Ayr United, because he's actually brought them up and made them into a Scottish Premiership side. The signs look good at the moment. Yes, they've got real stiff competition in the shape of John McGlynn's Falkirk, as well as maybe Queen's Park, Partick Thistle, etc. It's a really interesting league. I think Fridays are worth watching for any Championship game that's on the TV, because it is, and pardon the pun, it's a dog-eat-dog league for sure between all of those different teams going together. I think anyone can win that league at this point in time. It'll turn out differently as the season progresses, but at the moment it's so wide open that anyone that goes on a bit of a run could find themselves near the top of the table. So it's a great sort of proving ground for him. I think there's a lot of eyes on the Championship, and it's better for him at this point in time to just enjoy his career at Ayr United, make them into a Premiership team potentially. He's got the backing of the ownership. They've just opened the new stand. Everything seems to be rosy in Ayrshire at the moment. So why leave that for a potential banana skin job, if we're being honest, because they could very easily go back down. I know they've been up for so long, but every season we seem to be talking about St Johnstone and that ilk have been one of those teams. Is this going to be the year that they potentially go down? From the way things are looking so far this season, they look to be one of the main contenders, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, Ayr are a highly ambitious club, Ryan. You've seen the new stand, and the owners have got lofty plans for them. And one of those plans is to become a top flight team again. I think it was 77, 78 the last time Ayr United were in the top flight. Someone might correct me on that, but I'm sure it was round about then anyway. So, it's a long time to be missing from Scottish football's top flight. And I think Ayr have got a hardcore of supporters that will follow them, and they will go along. And if they bring top flight football back to Ayr, they'll turn up in the numbers. And I just think that he's got a real chance to achieve tangible success with Ayr United, Scott Brown and Stephen Whittaker. And, they've did very well so far, kept them up. And last season, when it looked for a while that they might be heading down to the third tier of Scottish football, so they kept them up very well. And as I say, I think everything's a learning process. They'll have been burned by the Fleetwood experience, but they'll be even more determined to come out the other end of it, better people and better managers, and improving themselves. And I think that's what Brendan Rodgers was saying as well, that these experiences that sometimes are unpleasant, but you do become better because you look introspectively and you say to yourself, okay, what could I have done better? How can I go about my business better? And I think these two guys are currently doing that at Ayr United, and they're adding to what is already looking like an exciting league this season. Falkirk going toe-to-toe with them as well, which is great. And as you say, there's some wonderful games to be had on a Friday night viewing, and it's worthwhile tuning into them.
Yeah, because you could see Celtic's opponents next season, very likely, who their opponents are going to be next season when one of these teams do get promoted, whether that's Partick Thistle, Ayr United, Falkirk, etc. There's so many different sides that are vying for that spot, not just through automatic promotion, but through the playoffs as well. I don't doubt that the team that finish second bottom will have a hell of a game versus the team that get through the playoffs through the Championship. I like to see that good competition from the second league going into the top league, and long may that continue. Brendan Rodgers was asked, he was kind of put on the spot this afternoon, but I like this from Brendan Rodgers. He was asked, do you see anyone in your current squad now that you think is going to be a future manager? I wonder what odds you would have got for this. I think really low odds for what he was going to say when he was going to talk about who was going to be who could potentially be the next manager from this current squad. I look at the likes of Callum McGregor. I think Callum can be a manager if he wants to be later on. It's the big what if. I think playing and coaching and management are three totally different things. When you're coaching, you're giving opinions and you're working with the players. When you're managing, you're making decisions. I look at the guys that I have. I've got some fantastic players here who, in their own right, may want to go down that route. But it's not always the one that clearly stand out that become the manager. I'm sure there are plenty of players that will tell you that they would they would have thought someone was going to be a manager, and then they've gone on and done ever so well in terms of not being maybe not thinking of being a manager, then going and doing ever so well. I would look at that, starting that as a starting point, and then when that time comes for him, if he wants to go down that route, then he certainly shows a lot of the facets that you would need to manage and coach. So pretty glowing terms from Brendan Rodgers for the captain. It's always likewise with Callum McGregor towards his current manager too. So would you agree with those statements that he would be the sort of ideal candidate or the standout candidate for who could potentially be a manager down the line?
I think if you've watched Inside the Huddle, you'll get a grasp on Callum McGregor's leadership qualities. Now, remember when he took over from Scott Brown, there was many eyebrows raised because people didn't see that kind of leadership quality in Callum McGregor or a captain. And then there was all this kind of, does it really matter about the armband and all that? And then one of the first things he did was to get all the players together after the first game. And everybody was like, oh, wow. And he got them in a huddle, didn't he? And from that moment onwards, the Celtic fans just warmed to him, that kind of leadership role that he was thrust into. And, he followed the guy, as has been repeated many times, he followed a guy whose moniker when he left the club was captain, leader, legend. And I think Callum McGregor has ticked all those three boxes since assuming that role. He's a true captain, he's a true leader, and if he's not a legend, well, he's not far off it, is he? He will leave the club a legend. But I actually think he is a legendary figure at the club. So, and he has been the best player in Scottish football by a country mile and some distance for a number of years now. So, you could equally apply those monikers to him. And if Brendan Rodgers is telling you this guy could be a manager, and we've sat down with him and we've spoken to him before, he just has a way about him. He has an aura about him, and he has a fantastic delivery, the way he talks. And I, for one, think if that's the route that Callum McGregor wishes to go down, then I think he could take to that like a duck to water. Could be wrong, but I mean, there's no, as you say, there was no prizes for guessing who he was going to say is manager material in the current squad. I also think down the line, maybe somebody like Alistair Johnstone might fancy it. So I think he's got a way with him and a way of speaking, and you just don't know what players think about when they're hanging up their books. And you might think this is a bit left field, but even somebody like Greg Taylor, I think Greg's got a way about him.
He's got the personality for it.
Yeah. And if maybe not a manager, he could certainly be somebody's perfect assistant, a great number two, somebody to bounce off, and good cop, bad cop type thing. He'd be the good cop, manager being the bad cop type thing. So I think those three in particular for me and the current Celtic team stick out to me as big personalities and people that could step into a role like that further down the line.
Yeah, I think you could add Kasper Schmeichel to that list as well, to be honest, as well. I know his dad didn't go down that route, but he could. I think he's good enough in terms of a talker and a communicator. I was incredibly impressed with his first press conference at Celtic. I just thought he was a class act. As you knew that he'd be a class act. He clearly gets the good genes from his dad, because his dad's a class act on the telly as well, a good communicator, and he's learned, perfect English, although he has grown up in English. He's probably just as English as he is Danish, let's be honest with that, how good his accent is, or how mixed his accent is. But yeah, I think he could be a player. People saying McCowan in the comments as well. Yeah, potentially. He's just starting his Celtic career, but he could be a player to go that maybe goes down that route down the line. I always like to see Scottish managers do well. Was also having a look at some of the comments from Brendan Rodgers about potentially moving fixtures in order to benefit Scottish teams. Borussia Dortmund play tonight against Bochum in the Bundesliga in the late kick-off on a Friday night. If you know anything about scheduling, you know that there's always that late game at night in Borussia Dortmund. Not in Borussia Dortmund, but in the Bundesliga for a team. Sometimes it's Bayern Munich, sometimes it's Leipzig, Borussia Dortmund, etc. But they've always got that Friday night game, and that'll give them good preparation because they'll have 3 days, and Brendan Rodgers was touching upon that. Do you think that's something that Scottish football can maybe adapt? You see it in the Championship, as we've discussed previously with the Championship and the lower leagues, but do you think that could be something that the Scottish leagues could adapt? I know that the BT Sport had it on Friday nights. I seem to remember Celtic playing against Hamilton quite a few times on Friday nights, including Odsonne Edwards' debut, where he scored the scruffiest goal known to man.
Yeah.
I remember that one in particular.
I think it's something that Scottish football seriously needs to look at, especially when you're talking about European representation. Celtic are getting to play the Champions League runners-up, and they're playing in a 5:45 kick-off on a Saturday night when Borussia Dortmund are playing tonight. The turnaround is quite tight for it. It's a Tuesday night kick-off.
It's almost a day advantage, Tony.
Yeah. Celtic haven't really complained about it, but why was Celtic scheduled for the 5:45 kick-off in this particular one? I mean, I just think it's utterly ridiculous, but it's an age-old argument, isn't it? But I think you have to seriously start, looking at this kind of thing. Celtic should be playing tonight. They really should. If other clubs in Europe can accommodate their Euro representatives, then why can't Scotland? But
yeah,
you get the argument of unfair advantage, all this sporting integrity. Call it what you like, but you either want your clubs in Europe to do well, or you don't. And I just think sometimes the ruling bodies and the board, they're an impediment to your clubs doing well. They are, and they can be, and have been in the past. And I include all our Euro representatives in that. I don't just mean Celtic. I include the likes of Rangers, Hearts, and Kilmarnock, who, when they're, in the earlier rounds, if they can be helped by moving fixtures, and they have to do it. We need the coefficient to be better.
Tony, it becomes Scotland v Germany here. I think for the SFA, and you've got to look at what's the best scheduling to help the home nation or the home team against a rival nation. I'm not saying Scotland. There's a great relationship between Scotland and Germany. I know that, but in terms of coefficient, Scotland's coefficient has got to be improved, and I think the best way in order to do that is to accommodate teams' domestic fixtures for these games in Europe, which are more difficult to move. You can't really move European games, but you can move domestic fixtures.
Of course you can, and I don't think logistically it would be that, would create you too many problems, I have to say. But there is no reason, no justifiable reason why Celtic should be playing at 5:45 on a Saturday night when they're playing Borussia Dortmund at 8 o'clock on Tuesday night in the Champions League. Somebody has to explain that. Somebody from, the SFA has to explain why that is the case. And, you can talk about computers spitting out fixtures, but why was this game picked at this particular time to be televised live? Why this one?
It doesn't make sense to me. And also, I just think a side note to that, you had a player come out in the past couple of weeks, quite a prominent player in world football, talking about the scheduling of games and how much games are piling up on each other, saying that they might need to actually go into strike if they play X amount of games. The next week he goes down with an ACL injury. So I think there's a definite argument to be talked about here and discussed about how much pressure is getting put on footballers. I know it's their job, it's their full-time job, but they are getting asked to play 3 games in 7 days, and a lot of occasions 3 games in 8 days. That is a lot for top level football. If you want football to be played at that top level, to an elite level, as we keep on talking about, then you've got to be scheduling these games better, because injuries are going to happen, fatigue's going to happen, and the overall product will hurt due to the saturation of football as a whole.
Lots of managers talk about the R&R, don't they? The rest and recuperation and all that kind of stuff with their players. And a lot of times after matches, you say to them, you had them in today, what did you do? And they say nothing. They rested. They had rest days and stuff because they have to go again. But this has to be looked at seriously in Scottish football with our European representatives. But you'd want it applied fairly across the board. You don't want it to apply to certain teams, Ryan. I want it applied to every Scottish Euro representative, that if they've got a problematic fixture, then it's moved to accommodate them. Because, as you say, you can't move European fixtures, but you can certainly move domestic fixtures around it to schedule it to try and get the best outcome for the guys that are flying the flag for your country and your coefficient in European football. And I don't care if it's Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, St Mirren, Kilmarnock. It has to be applied fairly across the board. You know, it's time they got a hand. No, Borussia Dortmund, as I say, they're playing tonight. They'll have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to get their head in the ball game for this. Celtic,
and Tuesday during the day as well.
Yeah, you know, and Celtic will have what? Well, they'll leave. I think Brendan Rodgers said they'll probably get home about midnight on Saturday.
Yep.
So that leaves Sunday and Monday, and but Tuesday. So their opponents are having a whole day more, to prepare themselves for a tie of that magnitude. Match day 2 in the Champions League phase. It kind of beggars belief, but as I say, it's an age.
And both their games are at home as well.
Yeah, you know, and I think lots of supporters and managers and players have been shouting at the clouds for far too long regarding this issue. So it simply has to be addressed.
Yep, I totally agree with everything that you said, and I think
they can't use it as a stick. Yeah, they can't use it as a stick to beat the clubs with when the coefficient comes down. No, because they don't get every possible hand to do something about that coefficient, and it's time that it's an issue that needs to be addressed moving forward. It has to be.
Yep, for everybody, and not just Celtic. And it's not. I don't think anybody's looking for preferential treatment. You're just looking for fair treatment and the best possible chance of progressing in Europe.
In Europe against clubs who you're vying coefficient-wise with for various other things.
Yep, absolutely. This is why the squad game is going to be so important this season in terms of. I speak about it so many times, but there isn't a best 11 anymore. I think there's a best 15, 16, and you rotate accordingly, given fatigue levels, injuries, form as well. There is no best 11 at this moment in time. I think there's just going to be rotation, and unfortunately, that's the way it is. The days of a best 11, I think, are long gone with the amount that players are asked to play nowadays. So that's just the way it is. Tony, was there anything else from the press conference that you wanted to touch upon?
No, I think we've covered the main facts, haven't we? And Brendan Rodgers, spoke at length about Scott Brown, and he spoke about the, helping Scottish Euro representatives. Didn't speak particularly at length of that. He just sort of said that they could hopefully come to some arrangement with that, with the broadcasters and all that. So yeah, and obviously told us all about Cameron Carter-Vickers, but I think it's what we all kind of knew or we expected to hear, wasn't it? So I think, again, I thought he was very impressive. He handles a lot of things very well these days, but as I said this morning on the briefing, a lot of positivity exuding from Celtic just now, so it's very hard to find negatives at this moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're watching live just now, and thank you to the people that have watched live, we really do appreciate it. In about half an hour's time, the predicted lineups will drop. We always drop them, or try to drop them, 24 hours before the match, just to allow them to breathe a little bit. Tony and I have not picked the same team, which is a bit of a surprise, because we're usually both in the same wavelength, and I've got to caveat that by saying that we don't know each other's teams before we do them. We do them anonymously, and then put them in together. The first time I see Tony's team is when he sends me them on the email. So there is 2 different teams coming round, so that'll be something to look forward to in the next half an hour or so. Also tomorrow, I'm going to be putting out publishing the Grand Old Team podcast from Love Street 1986. If you're already a member, that has been available for the past day or so. So that'll be going public at some point tomorrow. So look forward to that. Tony, do you just want to talk about that?
Yeah, myself and Kevin spoke about Love Street 86. Brian McClare, who I did a big interview with the other day, said if everybody who claims to have been at Love Street in 1986 was there, then there'd have been a crowd of about 250,000. Kevin was there. I wasn't. I went to watch my father's amateur team. My brother was there. And
oh, have you muted your mic there, Tony?
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, we talk through Love Street 86. Kevin is a good tales, and we just kind of go off on tangents and various things. But I think it's one of the fondest Celtic title wins from back in the day, Davy Hayes' only title win, and a wonderful team goal, sadly scored by a man who just splits the Celtic supporters in two, Maurice Johnstone, but it's still a wonderful team goal, and everything about it, the adversity that Celtic were facing in their last 8 games, and he reeled them off to win in a title which was just so unexpected, and Hearts dropping points on the last day. So yeah, it's we talk about that, and for those who were around and were there and enjoyed it, I think you'll enjoy this one in particular.
Yeah, the redacted goal scorer scored in that day. I think the less said,
Redacted
the
goal
better.
scorer.
I don't. Tony, I think you're giving them credit. You're giving certain people credit for saying they split the Celtic support in two. I think the Celtic support are pretty unified on their opinion of that player. But yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. That'll be available on the Celtic Way YouTube channel tomorrow at some point. So just keep an eye out on that. If you're subscribed, you've got your notifications on, then you'll know when that goes live. So enjoy that when it comes, guys. Thank you to everybody that's joined us today live on the podcast. If you want to support our work just that little bit more, you can join our YouTube members channel for just £2.99 a month. You'll receive early video access, priority comments, and exclusive members chat function. Tony, was there something you wanted to say there?
Yeah, I just wanted to apologise for one, the dogs barking, and two, the technological issues that I'm having. I'm having an absolute nightmare. Whenever I move, my microphone does something. I don't know what's going on. I'll try and sort it out. But it's you're at the mercy of things when they don't work. And when you're on kind of a live broadcast, there's no hiding place from it. So apologies for that if it's disrupted the flow and upset the rhythm of the pod. It's not what I intend.
No, it's all good. We've still managed to get a good 36, 37 minutes off of it. These things happen. Technology happens. I've experienced it myself in my 27 years of living so far. You can never trust technology. I'll end the stream here, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening. Really do appreciate it. We'll be back about an hour and a quarter, about an hour before the game at McDermott Park, live at McDermott Park, to cover all things Celtic and react to the team that Brendan Rodgers has picked. Until then, guys, enjoy the start of your weekend, and we will speak to you all tomorrow. See you later, guys.